Doc Manning, he will truly be missed. He was a great aficionado, jazz aficionado, that is, and a historian. He had a great program on WEAA. What a fantastic interviewer he was. How well he could pull from those musicians their life stories and their thoughts and how they saw things. There's not too many like him. I also remember the conversations that we had, which I have always enjoyed. And later in our life, I learned that we were both Air Force veterans. So, brother veteran and brother, all I can say is rest in peace.
I love Supreme. I love Supreme. Peace and love, everybody. My name is Navasha Dea, vocalist here in Baltimore, Maryland. I want to send my love and appreciation to Doc Manning. May his soul rest in perfect peace. I met him during my college days at Morgan State University on his show In the Tradition. He was presenting our music, Fertile Ground, on his show. We released our first album, Field Songs, in the late 90s. And I was Miss Morgan, and our CD release concert was one of my programs I produced as Miss Morgan. And EAA gave us so much love. And Doc Manning, I want to say that was the first show Fertile Ground was on the radio. I want to say that. And he just always gave us so much love. He always gave me so much love as an artist, even in my solo career as a vocalist. And he's a steadfast fixture here in the Baltimore scene, and he will be truly missed. We thank you so much for all you did for the art of jazz, for music in general, for the artists here in Baltimore. You will be missed. Job well done. And in all of this, we know the Creator has a master plan always. Everything is always in divine order, and you will be missed. Thank you for all you've done and did. Doc Manning, job well done. Peace and love.
My brother Doc Manning was an amazing teacher. He took the time and had the commitment to delve deeply into the intricacy of Black classical music to the extent that he could educate others about it spontaneously. He played the optimal, or should I say, he epitomized the role that a non-musician can play in a musical setting. He was an announcer, a promoter, a producer, a peacemaker at times, a galvanizer of artistic spirits. He did it all. I think the two personality characteristics of his that made his contribution to the music scene most impactful were his selflessness and his pragmatic thinking. I'll miss Doc forever. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Diana Harris. I'm the Executive Director of Contemporary Arts, Inc. I was lucky to have known Doc on a personal as well as a professional level. Through Contemporary Arts, Inc., Doc was a loyal supporter, an MC, and often came to the Sax camp for encouragement to our children. On a personal level, I was introduced to Doc by Don Griffin, the visual artist in Baltimore. Don and Doc spent many hours conversing and talking about music on WEAA and on the music. We were blessed to have Doc in our lives, and he will be sorely missed.
Hi, my name is Sean Johnson. Doc and I worked together at Andi Musique for many years, and he remained one of my closest friends ever since then. Doc was one of the most passionate fans and promoters of music that I've ever met. He liked nothing more than talking about music with musicians and regular folks, and he was just as excited promoting famous musicians as he was up and coming musicians. His presence in the music community will most certainly be missed.
Hi, everybody. Bass clarinetist and composer Todd Marcus here. Just wanted to offer my tribute and appreciation for our friend Doc Manning. Doc was a longtime friend of mine who was very much a kind supporter and champion of my music, even from when I was really young and just getting started, and would come by the radio station on his Monday nights, and just was it's always affirming, and showed interest in the work that I was doing, even when it was very raw in its early phases. Would play the music on the radio and talk about music and the artists that we loved. And he so much loved other artists, McCoy Tyner and Billy Bang and Lafayette Gilchrist, and so many folks would call into the radio show, and he would interview them so generously, and just an important person and supporter and friend and champion for so many of us. And so glad that we are celebrating him and grateful for him and his work and his love, and we love him deeply.
Ready? My name is Matthew Nadel. People call me Matty. It's short for Matthew. Doc was a customer for years at the Golden Temple, where I worked for 15 years. And Doc was one of those people that gives you faith in humanity again. It's a lot of room to get cynical and all the baloney, and you meet somebody like Doc and you think, oh, things aren't so bad after all. That, and he had a really good way of telling me I was full of shit and being nice and funny about it. Not full of shit, but just, letting me know how wrong I might be about something without making me feel bad. Also, despite being very much formulated by his military service, he didn't have that edginess that people who come back from military service, especially a war, have. So he left part of that back in Vietnam and took the skills with him back to civilization. I hope I made my point. Great knowing you, Doc.
This is jazz vocalist and flautist Rhonda Robinson. I first met Doc Manning even before I became a jazz vocalist. He was a regular customer at the Golden Temple Health Food Store where I worked, and he was such a big influence from the start when I was still working there. And I first started studying jazz with Grammy-nominated jazz vocalist Janet Lawson. And just listening to his program every Monday night just really opened my eyes to all the breadth of expression there was in jazz. And he was always so supportive. When I had a gig, he would announce it, doing interviews on his program, and coming to concerts, and then later on working beside him at Andi Music, and also him announcing my shows at Andi Music. And he's just been there from the beginning for me, and I just appreciate every moment with him. One of my favorite memories of him was around 2001. The Johns Hopkins Humanities Department sponsored a artist residency with Cecil Taylor, the great Cecil Taylor, and Doc and I attended almost every event they had of that. It was a week-long event, and they had parties every night until like 6 a.m., and Doc and I were there, and it was a great memory that we shared together, hanging out with Cecil and going to his concerts and seminars and panel discussions. And I miss Doc very much, and thank you so much for everything.
Hi, I'm Ginny Welsh. I've known George Manning for about 20 years. We met at Andy Music, where I was the on-call computer person, and he was the MC for the concerts at Andy Music Live. He was so friendly. I felt I could ask him about music, even though it was very obvious that I had no background and knew very little. I learned a lot about the performers and what kind of music they would be playing. I even asked his opinion on purchasing CDs for my collection at home. We talked about a variety of topics. That man could talk about anything. He was thinking about having me do some live streaming for him, but that project never panned out. I really miss him and value the time we spent together.